Well, here we go, Leechy. So, special episode today, the end of the Channel 9 Do You Want to Live Forever program. Love to get have a bit of a chat about that. Also ask some questions about your plan and your process.
Having watched the 4 eps and the title being Do You Want to Live Forever, I don't think they proved to me that you're going to live forever watching the whole thing. I did like particularly the last episode in that we were introduced to a couple of guys in Australia that were 100 years of age playing tennis with Todd Woodbridge. That was pretty cool. Then when they went to Japan and they met up with a soccer team of over 80-year-olds, which was interesting. I thought that was fun. When they came down to doing the testing on how many years you got back from 12 weeks of having a healthy lifestyle, straight away I'm questioning whether you can gain 10 years back in 12 weeks. I mean, certainly you can build habits. Certainly you're making a big change. I mean, there were a few people in there that had drastically bad lifestyle choices that they were living and giving up alcohol, giving up cigarettes, introducing exercise. All those things are great. But if you go back to what you were doing before, well, then, it's all for nothing really, isn't it?
I've done those tests as well. And biologically, I'm 15 years younger than I am in terms of my chronological age, and you would be the same. If we can get into maybe a little bit of a look-see into your plan. I know you and I don't talk necessarily about the way that we live our lives openly for no other reason except for it's assumed. We just it's not deliberate necessarily, we just have subscribed to health and fitness forever. And so because of that, we make different choices. But have you got growing up the way that you did in a very strong formula around performance, and you have talked in previous episodes about your journal and your diaries and your coaching and the plan. Do you subscribe to that now in this stage of your life?
I prescribe to a high performance mindset that carries over from being an athlete and wanting to win to being now a 60-year-old and going, what do I need to do in a given week to live a high-performance life around longevity? And I think the word longevity gets thrown around a lot, and it's going to get on the nose, I think, over the next few years in some ways. The better word's health span. How long are you going to live healthily on this earth before you tap out? When things start going bad, you don't want it to go bad for too long. So you're doing, the average person does 9.3 years of deteriorated health before they go. I don't want to be doing that. In a perfect world, I'd get to 100. I'd still be mentally strong, physically doing the things I wanted to do, obviously slow down a bit, but then, I'd tap out quick. So that would be a good world, right? So when you ask me, what do I do now? Well, my mindset's still the same. I still go and search for what is the best week that you can have to live the healthiest you can live for the longest period of time. And when you start talking about bucking the trends, like the reason, let's go back a second and talk about the blue zones. So the blue zones are those areas around the world where there's more centenarians, people over the age of 100 per capita than anywhere else in the world. And when you start talking about health and wellness and longevity, they were literally not changing the tune of what they normally did and everyone did in their community. You get up in the morning, you'd eat off the land, you go into the fields, you do manual labour. You finish the day, go back to your family, laugh, probably cook together, hang out, and repeat. And that's the way they lived, right? And they were living a long, long time because of it. In our world, we can't do that because if you do what everyone else does, then you die younger and you die with disease, and the quality of life is not there. So to answer your question, what do I do? Well, if we break it up and we look at what that show highlighted, the first one for me would be community. And I make sure that I've got good quality friends like yourself, people that you can talk to every day. I try to mix exercise with friends. So like this morning I went bike riding for an hour and I did that with one of my mates. And we chatted during the ride. We had a coffee afterwards. And I got that community, that sense of relationships that's so important. And then when you start looking at that, evidence proves that, and we had Michael Myers go on, if you've got 3 friends that you could tell anything to, and your relationship at home with your partner is strong, adds 8 years to your lifespan compared to someone that doesn't have that. So that one's a no-brainer, right? So that one for me is all around chatting to my mates every day, having a good relationship with my wife at home, which we are honest and talk all the time, and get around my friends as much as I can. And I integrate that exercise with it. What do you do? I know you would probably do similar.
Look, I will, but let's just stay with you for a sec. Obviously, I'm your best friend, or you consider me your best friend. Now, I've always found that interesting. Is that because being around me makes you feel younger just because I look younger?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think that's right. That's right. To answer your question, what do? I'm not as formulaic with it. It's very sort of natural. I don't spend a lot of time making firm rules around the way that I do things, but I do have those apparently. So, and we all get given different hands. We all get dealt different hands in terms of our genetics. I think that's really important. The show didn't talk about that a lot.
The only time they went into that was where they brought up Duncan Armstrong and his son. So a genetic disposition to have heart issues, which you could argue with Duncan, his diet didn't do him any favours. So he had probably a weakness there, and then being on a meat diet and high fat is not going to help you when you've got heart issues.
No, and some of the things that we're talking about throughout this entire lounge is irrespective of genetics to some extent. We're talking about minimising the things and the choices that we can make. So for me, I know I've got atrial fibrillation from overtraining. I know I got picked up a parasite before an Ironman in 2013. I had it for 5 years, lost 10 kilos and had no energy until I had, and that has caused damage for sure. And that was treated with a semi-experimental treatment, which has probably also caused damage. So there's these underlying aspects that are real for all of us. I'm a network of maybe 30 people that I consider to be relatively close and a handful of intimate friends.
Yeah, because you can be fit and healthy, but if haven't got friends and you're unhappy, then that's no good at all.
So let's stick with that relationship thing as well. There's a book on all the stands and the best-selling books at the moment called How Not to Give a Fuck. The other book is How Have the Courage to Be Disliked. Right now, both these books speak to the same principle in relationships, which is the relationship with yourself. If you're in your head caring too much about what other people think, you're then inspiring a sense of anxiety, which means you're not going to be at peace with yourself and you're going to suffer as a result. And that's essentially, if you read both books, that's what they're saying. They're saying be true to you, which means the relationship we have with ourselves, if we're actually at home with that and we feel really comfortable, we're actually going to be more accommodating, which means it's going to amplify that longevity aspect as well. So we're doubling down on the relationship component.
That's good. I the next one that has always been so important to me, and it probably cuts across mental health and general happiness for me, is the exercise component. Like I've never not exercised other than when I've been ill my whole life. It's been my go-to. There's a lot of people out there that don't exercise. For me, it was one of those non-negotiables I've always done, and I give exercise now as much thought like I did when I did Ironman, as far as the breakdown and what I do. Probably in some ways an expert as a 60-year-old in what you should do in regards to your routine for the week. So for me, I'll exercise an hour every day. I don't miss a day. And people could sit listening would say, geez, you need a day off. But because the variety of my training is such, and the change from the different muscle groups, that I don't ever feel too sore in any one spot for too long. So I'll go and rotate Pilates. I do that in a session where I do it on a machine, or a former machine, and I do that for core strength. I do that for balance and coordination, which you lose as you get older, and I do that for strength. So when you hit the age of 50, you're losing 1% to 2% of your strength every year to the day you die, unless you do strength training. So you're losing your strength quicker than you're losing your cardio fitness as you get older. So it's a must do. And the other thing you lose too is your coordination. And if you fall over the age of 70 and you break a hip and end up in hospital, the death age comes at you much quicker. So that one's a really important one. I mix that with cardio. So I do bike riding 2 or 3 days a week in a safe environment, and I'll push hills and get my heart rate up, but not for too long. So most of my cardio work is done at that zone 2, which is what we've spoken about before, which is that talking, just being able to talk sort of mode. I bring in paddling. I love being out in nature. So I love that feeling of being out in the water. And my bike riding is around parks and around trees and the like, which makes me feel good as well. So I'll do that and mix it up, and then I hit the gym and I'll pump weights. But I never do gym 2 days in a row. I'll go from bike to gym and then back to paddling and then to Pilates. So it's always that break in there. And I always train in the mornings. So I'll do it so I get it done for the day, because I always feel better after I've done it. The endorphins hit, that dopamine hit that just makes you feel clear in the head and feel good. So I do that as well. I know that you'll double down more on the bike riding than I do, but you'll do strength training as well. And you do most days of the week as well. So you might miss a little bit with recovery, but for me, my body doesn't need to have a break.
Yeah, I think that's true. The obsessive personality disorder that I generally have means I will be obsessed with something for typically 5 or 7 years. To be a cyclist, to actually go riding, you have to have a level of fitness that enables you to actually do that sport. Groveling around running, groveling around paddling or cycling is no fun, and it's not sustainable. So for my mind, I like to get to a certain point with VO2 max and my anaerobic threshold where I feel like I've got a bit of weaponry. Even at my age, I've still got something up my sleeve should I need it. I think the other thing here is when you talk about your training, and I've trained with you for a long time, people go to a personal trainer because they don't have the intrinsic motivation, or they can't be bothered, or they need some help, right? And that's a great thing to do. You want to get some qualified help. Training with you or other people like you, it's quite motivating because you're not there to tell us what to do. We're just joining you on a particular activity. Mm-hmm. And because you've got that mentality and that position about what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, it's very easy for people to jump in on that. Mm-hmm. So if you can join a group of people that are somewhat motivated, it's got a massive training effect and also societal and relational health benefit, which sort of joins the first two pillars together.
Well, it's funny. So the exercise part for me is there's probably 3 things that come out now after what you've just said. One is that if I'm not doing it with someone else or other people, with that community feel that I get, if I go by myself, it's AirPods in and I listen to podcasts, and I either learn or I'm listening to something and educating myself. So that curiosity is still there in me, and that learning part is one of the pillars that's really important as we get older. And I tend to bring that into exercise if I'm not with someone else. So if I'm paddling, AirPods in, bike riding, AirPods in, and I'm learning. I'm listening to stuff on health, wellness. I'll do golf as well, like just for fun. But I do have a series of podcasts that I'll listen to, and I'll probably get to a podcast every day. So there's that in there as well. The other one is that I've always been ridiculously competitive, like to the point where it's unbalancing. And when you're younger, it's the highs and lows are frightening. Like I was at the point where if I did a bad training session, I'd be down on myself until I did a better one the next session. So it was an issue. It created a winning environment, but it's not healthy mentally. And ego's involved in that as well. And it took a long time. So when I retired at 35, being a full-time athlete, and for the next 10 years, I still had it there. I had to beat everyone in what I was doing. And it took a long time to get rid of that. And now I can go out with you and train and not feel like I have to win, which is actually pleasing to me. So for me, like my week's training now is about, being on this earth longer and being healthier than what it is about how fast I go. And that transition took a long time.
Well, I'm sure it did for you. Even for most competitive individuals, they grow up wanting to, having this desire to be the best. I had an anger issue as a kid, as a tennis player, and as a golfer as well. Mm-hmm. I would smash my racket and smash my golf club. And I recently caught up with a friend who I used to play tennis with a lot, and he said, I don't know, can we actually do this without you smashing a racket? The last thing I was going to do was smash a racket. But just on that competitive point, you've manufactured and structured your life so that you can still compete, but now in golf. So those people like cyclists and runners who have just not changed sports, they sort of end up where I am, which is you overdo it because you're still trying to regroup, relive a past that's no longer available. Yeah. And you can keep getting better enough. I know you're off a single-digit handicap, and you think about it in a competitive mindset more so than you do anything else.
The problem is, right, if I went back in the pool and swam, or ran or whatever, I'm never going to be as fast as what I was before. So that's gone, right? And I've accepted that. And for a lot of athletes that have been good in sport, they take golf up because it's so hard, but they can at least have a measurement of getting better at it because you've got the handicap, you've got score, you can compete against your mates. I was golfing before we turned up here, and I was out there with the boys and it was a laugh and, we competed and all the rest of it. It's like, so you're right. You do get that, but there's few sports when you get older that you can do that and still get better. Sleep and recovery. They did talk about that during the show and, that stress levels and people not getting enough sleep. For me, that one's a big one because you think about it, when you get 3 or 4 hours sleep, when you've tossed and turned all night, the next day you're not that motivated. You don't want to go and exercise. The whole day is just, you can't think straight. So I made the decision 5 years ago to pull the pin on getting up at 5 a.m. and training, which in some ways, when you've done it all your life, was a big thing because, there's a badge of honour in feeling like you've gone and done the session before the day started, in the dark, which you still do. You still get on the bike now and then and you'll ride in the dark and get it done. I won't do that now. I'll get out of bed at 7. I get 8 hours sleep, mate, at worst 7 if I've had one of those nights. I toss and turn a bit, and I've got sleep's about routine. It's about, knowing your own patterns. Like the room's dark for us. I put white noise on in my phone next to my bed, and that blocks out all the other noise. I start thinking about going to bed at 10 at night, and I'm in bed by 10:30, and then there's that 20-minute process of just winding down. So I do all that right. Don't have coffee after midday, and I sleep well because of it. And it's a really, really important thing for people to think about because if you're not getting enough sleep, the data is really strong in saying that you're not going to live as long.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that white noise that you talk about, I play your voice telling me about Coolangatta Get a Gold before I go to sleep. I'm asleep in minutes. Like every night I go to sleep listening to that shit. Tour de France is on at the moment, okay? Or it's just finished, depending on when this podcast comes out. Cyclists love that, and we love getting up and riding. If you're living in Europe, in France or in Italy, you can actually ride at a normal time. If you live in Bright in Victoria, you can ride at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Yeah. In Sydney and in Melbourne, you are restricted to getting up at 5 o'clock to 7:30. You don't want to be hit by a car. Yeah. Because of that, you get locked into that time frame. And I couldn't agree more with you. In winter, in the last few years, I do take the winter off. Like I train indoors only. Generally, I might ride once a week. But the alarm went off this morning with my usual group Friday morning, meet at 5:30, which means you're out of your house at 10 past 5. I was reading my Whoop data before I left, and my HRV, my heart rate variability, and my sleep quality was down. And I made the decision based on my health not to go. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have made that decision.
You would have gone training.
For sure.
You start having these arguments inside your own head. I'll go, no, I shouldn't. Yeah.
You'll be happier when you go. It'll be okay. You can sleep later in the day.
Exactly.
These concessions are things that I strongly believe now we shouldn't be making.
Look, when you're younger, you get away with more, right? But when you get older, you've got to be careful. Another one they brought up in the show was, they touched on it. They did recoveries. Sleep and recoveries in that same sort of basket. Ice baths, sauna, those sort of things. They're things that I think are the 5%ers, like the on top of the main pillars that we're going into now. But still, they brought it up. Like ice baths, I try to do that once or twice a week. I do it with other people, so it's a bit of fun, and mix it in with sauna. I've got a sauna at home. I have an infrared sauna at home. Had that since I had mold issues years ago to try to get rid of the inflammation out of my body. I find it's good, and there is some really, really strong data on saunaing, 3 to 4 times a week and reducing the chance of a heart incident by up to 50%. It's a real thing. So, they went into that. I think it's a good thing. But if you're not exercising, you don't have friends around, and, you're not eating well, they're your main kickers.
So, Leechy, other things that you do as a routine for your well-being?
So the show really went into a baseline on their medical scores. They went into a whole bunch of different things. I think it's so important. So, checkups, screening on your health. So I've got a cardiologist that I deal with. My dad had heart issues when he was younger. I saw my dad have a heart attack at the age, he was 42 years of age, had to have a quadruple bypass. Lifestyle choices brought that on. But in saying that, you can't be too careful. And we've had issues with Chucky in our paddling squad that had a heart moment and didn't make it. And we've had 2 others in our squad that paddling who had heart attacks and they survived. You can't be too careful. So I was getting checked every 2 years, and now I'm out to 5 years based on the fact that my heart's good. But I think it's really important to have a good relationship with your GP. And we're not talking about a GP that band-aids your solutions. That's old school. We're talking about a proactive GP that works with you to make sure that your blood work and the numbers that you've got are working in the right direction, and you've got a plan in place. So important. So I changed doctors a year ago because I felt like the person that I had wasn't going to give me the best chance of doing that. Really important. So I'll get a checkup, get my blood work done every year. I go now back to the cardiologist every 5 years because all the numbers are good and everything I've done, and I do all the other checks. I get my skin checked every year, go and do the government tests on your poo sample every year, and got that all under control. Because if you leave those things and come in with something like at the back end of a disease, the chances of surviving are not great.
Leechy, one of the things I thought about in the show that we watched on Channel 9 was a lot of the decisions that they made were just more sensible. They stopped being stupid with some of the decisions, and as a result, they had a 10% boost in their biological age.
Yeah, and they had a couple on there where the husband was drinking 40 to 60 beers a week, smoking a packet of cigarettes or more a day. The relationship was shit.
Mm-hmm.
The wife at the end said, listen, if we hadn't made these changes, I was out by the end of the year. The kids said that dad was aggressive, had problems when he drank. So it was just a mess, right? And to be fair, like if anyone did that, they'd be in the same situation, wouldn't they? So they took the low-hanging fruit, didn't they, bringing them on, and they got great results without doubt. So, yeah, you're right. Like there's common sense in all of this, and we all know that you should exercise a bit, move around, eat off the land, eat healthy, all the rest of it, get enough sleep, try not to stress, and do those things on a regular basis. What I did like out of the show, before we go on to the last one, which is food and nutrition, I thought the star out of the whole show was Nick Bell.
Yeah.
He was like the Neil Armstrong, getting to the moon first of longevity. Like, you could sit at home and if you saw the show, you'd be like, here's a guy who's 43, loaded with money, wants to be fit and healthy for a long, long time, and he's willing to go and take a chance to go and do it. I wouldn't go and inject myself with 150 injections to do gene therapy unless it was tested on someone else first. He's the person that it's been tested on.
It's so great that he exists in Australia. I mean,
he's the Brian Johnson of Australia. Like Brian Johnson's a guy who's super loaded overseas that's spending $2 million a year on trying to live forever.
You need those bleeding early adopters on the bleeding edge of experimentation as a pioneer for us to see what the rest of us should be considering. Not that we should be considering that gene therapy necessarily, but who can tell in the future. But just the fact that there's that committed dedication to longevity and some of those decisions, it's quite inspiring for the rest of us.
Someone's got to do it, right? Someone's got to be that pioneer that takes the leap to go and have a crack, to open up the opportunity for the rest of us to go, that worked. So, so he's reached out to us. Because our podcast is so popular now, Carlos, he's reached out to us and he's coming on next Thursday. So he's up in Sydney. He's a Melbourne boy. He's up in Sydney. He's coming in here to the lounge, and I'm pumped to ask him just, what he's found, what he was really thinking at the time when he did it. Did he want to back out? Would he have backed out if the cameras weren't there? Yeah. All the things that we want to know, right? Would he have done it all over again? On the show, the last ep, he talked about how he is much stronger, hasn't felt yet like his memory is any better than what it was. So, but he's going to fly over and do stem cell work over to Japan. So whether he's done that already, I don't know. But he's fascinating.
That'll be fascinating. Leechy, let's move on to your last pillar around food and nutrition, because this is a big one. Even daily, there's things in my reel that show up to talk about alcohol in particular. I mean, we'll get into that, where a long time ago now. People still believe this to be true. A glass of wine is great for you every day.
We know it's not now.
It's been debunked a million times by a million experts.
And people are still out there going, it's fine because they want to believe it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not true. Foods are really, mate, you can go down rabbit holes, can't you?
Yeah.
So let's go to the blue zone, right?
Sure.
So if you go and eat the same diet as the blue zones around the world, Sardinia, Okinawa, and the different areas, there's 5 or 6 of them around the world. You do that from the age of 60. So you can get to 60 and then go and adopt their diet of eating off the land, eating beans, plenty of veg, not much lean meat, but you can eat that, plenty of water, no soft drinks and the like. You add 8 years to your life.
It's possible to add 8 years.
Possible, yeah, sure. Possible to add 8 years to your life.
Yep.
Straight out.
Yep.
Without doing the exercise, the community, and all the other bits and pieces that go with it. So it's a big add-on to what you can get out of your time on this earth. So for me, what do? Most days I don't eat any solid foods until lunchtime. Not because I'm trying to fast, but because I don't need it. I'll get up in the morning and I'll drink a large glass of water. I take AG1, which is that athletic greens, which is a powder. It's got 70-odd vitamins, minerals, pre and post biotics in it for your gut health. And I'll take that with a scoop of protein powder as well, because I like to keep my protein consumption up. So I'll take that, then I'll go and exercise. By the time I come back, I'll have some more water, some more protein powder, and I'll have a coffee. By lunchtime, am I hungry? Sometimes no. I'll have some nuts, sultanas, and I'll graze on that, and that'll be what I'll eat. On other days like today, I'll throw in scrambled eggs with some avocado, and I'll throw that down at lunchtime and then won't eat again to the night time. So my rules are that I'll have lean meat most evenings for dinner, tuna, salmon, some steak, but the plate is loaded with vegetables or salad, and that's my go-to. And I'll try to mix up as much colours as I can. I'll try to mix up 5 or 6 different types of vegetables or salads and vegetables on the plate. Lots of colour, but they're whole foods, right? When you start talking about dessert and snacking, I'll give myself 2 pieces of dark chocolate a night because I love dark chocolate. But I'll have yogurt, non-dairy yogurt. I don't do well on dairy, so I'll do non-dairy yogurt with prunes, sultanas, and I'll snack on some more nuts. That's my diet. Alcohol, there is no alcohol at home. I never drink at home ever. Probably drink more than you do. But if I do, it's once a month and it's 2 or 3 drinks.
Well, I don't drink at all. So
and that's it.
Quite easy to
and
drink.
I become quite funny with 3 drinks in me.
The decisions you're making around your diet, one, because you know your body so well and you would know your body intimately because of the amount of training and things that you do. But 2, we both are students in this space. So we are super curious. And there's obviously too much information for us to actually make sense of. But the things that we do read and then we find that are validated as opposed to the tin hat wearing conspiracy theory, Pete Evans style of information, we adopt some of that. And so even when you say dark chocolate, I read a study this week, and I can provide the details, the link to this on the site, around cacao releasing stem cells. So the idea that we take dark chocolate, or you have dark chocolate as a snack or a treat, there's a health benefit associated with that. Much like the reason that I don't do any alcohol. There's not one element of evidence that it provides any benefit whatsoever.
No, that's right. You. It's a detriment to your health. Any which way you look at it. Yeah. So and the other thing too is that it ruins my sleep. So I sleep worse. I become foggy in the head. I drank when I was younger, and I do it off the back of races and rewarding yourself. And my diet, as you know, 10, 15 years ago was, too much sugar and just not what it is now. So, we don't all come from a perfect background and base.
It's hard to.
You live and learn, don't you? You live and learn and you work it out. But certainly I believe that from what I've seen and studied that if you stick to whole foods, you don't eat too much and you gap your meals, every now and then, like that sort of giving your stomach a break, your body a break from eating. You'll sit at a weight that's good for yourself and you'll be a lot more healthy without getting too silly with the whole thing.
When did you swim your last competitive race? The Noosa Triathlon when you're 40?
Yep. Yeah, spot on.
Probably right. Okay, so that's 20 years ago, and yet you still shave your arms. Why? So, Leechy, next week we've got Nick Bell. I know you've talked about that. I'm really interested to know what he knows that we don't. Like, he's making decisions here based on a basis of information that I don't know is that accessible to other people. So where is he finding the facts? Like, why did he come up with this idea that gene therapy in Mexico was what he wanted to do, stem cell therapy in Japan? I'd like to know where he's getting his information from because it's fascinating.
And the other one is, if he didn't have the money, what would he be doing outside of that sort of thing? So is it just what we do? Because we don't have $700,000 gene therapy. And would he be happy with that? Or is it, he's literally at the cutting edge and that's the way it is. The other one is, I know he set up a longevity business down in Melbourne. I think he's looking at doing that in Sydney. So I'm very interested in what that looks like, how he sees that, and whether he likes being the pin-up boy in this space.
Well, I think, look, he's a pin-up boy in that sort of experimental space, but I know you've been getting and fielding a lot of calls, and we've been taking calls from corporations and teams that want to understand high performance a little bit more in a holistic sense. For a long time, and I do this for a living, work with teams around high performance culture. And so we talk about relationship and communication, and there's always something to do from a self-development point. What I'm finding fascinating is that they're now coming to us for that, but also holistically, what does a better version of you look like in a better version of our team? And so I think it's going to be an interesting world where we start, there's no judgment in this. We're not calling people on their choices, but we're just providing them with essentially a blueprint for holistic health that is psychosocial and physical as well.
On that note, see you next week.
Thanks, Leechy.